Hey guys, welcome back. This is episode 2 of Project M3, and here I'll cover exhaust, rear suspension and rear brakes. So sit back and enjoy. And so the original exhaust is off. Wasn't too much of an issue to get it off, fairly straightforward. I'm just going to transfer these exhaust hangers from the original back box onto the Eisenman. I'm also going to move those exhaust hangers across because it's going to be easier to install it. When I was removing this exhaust, the original one, I've just pulled the rubber hangers off of these exhaust hangers. But when I'm going to refit this back box, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this bracket with the exhaust hangers on it, just because I think it's going to be easier to install it. It's going to be quite fiddly to try and actually get those rubber exhaust hangers onto those hooks. So get a few bits across. I'm also going to replace these clamps because they are a little bit corroded, and the clamps that are connecting the back box to the midsection of the car were actually in really good shape. So I'm going to keep them on, and I'm going to reuse them and return the new ones that I got from BMW, because I've realized that I'm going to need some fresh grounding straps. So let me show you how the underneath is looking like. I'm actually really quite impressed with how clean the car is. So there's hardly any corrosion on the rear subframe. There's a little bit of surface corrosion, but nothing overly exciting. I mean, for a car that's done nearly 200,000 miles, it's pretty low. I have seen cars with half this mileage which were rotten to the point where the subframes needed replacing. You can actually poke holes in the rear subframes. But the diff's looking in fairly decent condition. Nothing leaking. There's a little bit of moisture on the output flanges, but other than that it's pretty decent. So this is this side of the subframe. The body itself up there is in very good condition as well, so I'm very happy with that. I think over the winter I'm going to pull the rear axle down completely and try and refurbish the subframe and replace some of the bushings. Here are the two clamps which I'm going to reuse. They are specific to this car, so as you can see they're still fairly decent condition, so they're staying. And yeah, we're progressing, moving forward. So there you go, this is the final finished product, and it looks quite a bit different to what it did before when I started, and just as a whole I think it looks pretty nice and aggressive. I really do like how it looks. Otherwise, I mean, I wouldn't have bought all these parts for it. So yeah, very happy with it. As far as the job itself, it's taken pretty much most of the weekend, just because I like to take my time with anything that I do on my own car, and make sure that everything is done properly. But the car itself has been an absolute pleasure to work on. And what I mean by that is there are times when you're trying to undo a bolt and it's just rusted to hell and it would not undo, or whenever you try to undo the brake unions, which I constantly keep talking about on my channel, and none of that has actually been an issue with this car. Every single nut, every single clip, every single bolt, every single brake union was actually free moving, and there was absolutely no issue taking it all apart. It's almost like no one's ever touched this car and it's been garaged its entire time. I'm not sure whether that's the case, but it certainly feels like that. I think it's just astonishing how easy it's been to actually work on this car, and I'm really happy about that. If anything, more astonished than happy, but yeah, I think it turned out all right. As for the actual wheel fitment itself, I'm very pleased with that. The wheels are 18-inch by 10.5J all-round, as I mentioned before, ET25 all-round, with 265 front tyres and 295 rear tyres. I think they set the car off perfectly and they didn't need any spacers, so the fitment's good. As for the ride height, ideally, I would like to go probably about half an inch lower, but with springs and still having the EDC functioning, this is probably as good as I can expect. So eventually the car will go lower with the proper suspension and coilover setup, but for now this is definitely going to have to do. As for the brakes, I've driven the car a couple of times, and because I bought them used, I was quite skeptical on whether they'd need skimming or not, but they didn't. They have no issues with vibrations whatsoever, so that's saved me a few pounds. So they're good to go and they feel fantastic. Now moving on to the exhaust, I think the fitment on the exhaust and the way the tips look is pretty good. I'm quite pleased. I wasn't so sure about the AC Schnitzer tips, so I decided to go with the Eisenman for now. I might give AC Schnitzer a try later on, but as far as the Eisenman is concerned, it being a sport exhaust rather than the race, it's the quieter of the two available versions. It's definitely noticeable, but at the same time it's not ridiculously loud, so it suits the car fairly well. I think it's a nice subtle note change, and at the same time it's not unbearable when you drive the car. So happy with that. As far as the colour combination is concerned, I think everything works quite well. I quite like the fact that the calipers are billet aluminium and they're sort of unpainted in that silver colour, and how it all works with like a goldish anodized bells on the discs, and the bronze wheels, which is the standard finish. It's not something that I would have chosen, I don't think, but the fact that I actually found those wheels in that finish and put them on the car, I think they suit the car fairly well, and I think the whole thing just works nicely. Having an 18-inch wheel with 380mm disc inside the wheel, it looks really cool. It fills that wheel cavity up really well, and having a massive 6-piston caliper as well, I think it looks really good. So I'm over the moon with how it turned out, how it looks, and how it actually drives. It drives really well. The tyres so far have been good. I've got no experience with Michelin Cup 2s as of yet, but apart from the 2 times I've driven the car so far, but so far in the dry and fairly warm weather, they've been pretty good. Let's see what they're like when the weather gets colder and it gets a little bit wetter outside. So my initial plan was to actually run F80 brakes all round, front and back. So bolt on the back with a little spacer, like I said, and on the front I actually got a pair of F80 hubs which I was going to fit. The only thing you need to do for them to actually fit on E92 M cars is to modify the wheel speed sensor connector. So I was going to snip the plug and then put on a E9X plug onto it so you can plug into the car. And the other thing that's worth keeping in mind is the fact that F8X hubs on E9X M cars will raise the car by about 10 millimeters. So what I've gained by lowering the car, so what I've gained by fitting the H&R springs, I would have lost essentially, or if you like the other way around, if the right height that I would have lost with the H&R springs, I would have gained back up if I fitted the F8X front hubs. So I was then looking at coilovers, because obviously if you have coilovers that's not an issue, you can just set them to whatever you want and that's not a problem, but I'm not ready to buy coilovers just yet, so it's just on springs for the time being. So I then had a look around and I was lucky enough to find this StopTech Trophy kit, which is specific to E92 M3 car. So super happy with it. It's one of the kits which is probably one of the top braking kits you can get for any car really. So they're super light, super good, and they were in really decent condition for a very reasonable price. I think I paid probably about a quarter of what they should cost new. And they came with nearly new RSL 29 pads, and they're just fantastic. I've just driven the car a couple of times with them on and they already feel incredible. So I'm super happy with that. Next steps would be to have the wheel alignment done. Nothing too crazy for the time being, just to have it dialed in properly, just to make sure that everything's facing the right way and everything is even from left to right. And then once the proper suspension arrives, we'll do the back end rebuild with solid bushes, rose jointed control arms, solid front control arm bushes, and so on and so forth. We'll have a proper setup dialed in by a proper company with corner weighing and so on and so forth. But for now, this will do. In the next episode, I'm going to try and cover the installation of the flat under tray, the front splitter, the splitter skid plate, the rear wing, the rear diffuser, and subsequently I'll try and cover the few bits and pieces that I'm planning to do to the interior. So the seat swap, the coding out of the seat airbags, the installation of CarPlay head unit, the replacement of the trims, and potentially rear seat delete and maybe a huff cage, but we'll see. So that's it. Super happy with the car. If you like this sort of content and you want to follow the build of this car and you want to perhaps know more about that car or the E91 that's in there, which I'm currently building, which is going to have it's going to have N55 DCT powertrain in it, you know what to do. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you again in the next one. Thanks for watching and take care.